Welcome to the Cooking Chat Food and Wine podcast. Cooking Chat focuses on tasty recipes that get better with wine. On the podcast, we explore ideas for cooking with seasonal ingredients and wines to pair with them. You'll meet producers involved with the local food system, winemakers, and more. In today's episode, I'm joined by Stephen Nasiatka, the founder and chief wine officer of Stephen Uncorked. Through Stephen Uncorked, he brings the world of fine wine directly to people and organizations through immersive tastings, wine blendings, fundraising events, and unique corporate gifting. Through these experiences, Stephen has helped nonprofits raise funds, strengthen community ties, and create meaningful moments that last long after the final sip. Well, hello, Stephen. Welcome to the Cooking Chat podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me. Good to see you, David.
Yeah, looking forward to the conversation as well as the event we're going to talk about. But before we get into that, I like as a little warm-up question to hear about something delicious you've had in the food and wine category lately, a good pairing of note to get us our appetites wet.
All right. Well, the funny thing is, a number of what I do is exactly that, pairing food and wines, doing dinner, those sort of things. And so I actually think back to a dinner that was not too long ago, and probably an unusual pairing for many. People think of white wine, fish, red wine, meat. And I have a lot of fun doing exactly not that with different things. And so, for example, Um, sometimes you start off with this is the food. What do you pair with it for wine? Sometimes it goes the other way. At the end, it doesn't really matter. In this case, they had the group they really wanted to do their mac and cheese,
Oh, okay.
but with lobster, right? And
Ah,
so who
yep.
doesn't like a fantastic lobster mac and cheese? And so the cheese was a Gruyere.
Mm.
But then now you have kind of course, the fish that comes with the lobster. You then have the Gruyere, which is, kind of the heartier, has a lot going on. So what do you do? So what would you pair with that?
Champagne was my first guess, but how do I
Well,
do?
champagne works with everything,
Yeah.
so you're not wrong. And so for me, if I think about just kind of that, because of the creaminess, I would typically go more with like a Chardonnay. If I were going
Right.
to really
Yep,
just
that
do it
makes
right,
sense.
you have a lobster, so you have something that's seafood. I would probably start with a Chardonnay, maybe even a Chablis if it's not too cheesy.
Hmm.
But this one was really much more on the cheese, much less on the lobster.
Okay.
So I had the great flavoring of the lobster, but not the overpowering of it. So I said, let's do it with Pinot Noir.
Oh, nice.
And so we ended up the Pinot Noir with the cheese was absolutely perfect. And I
Mm.
said, why do it with one Pinot Noir when you can do it with three? And
Okay.
so we actually had three different Pinot Noirs, one a Deloche estate, which is
Hmm.
Russian River Valley, one that was a Burgundy from the Côte de Beaune, and or sorry, actually the Côte de Nuit was that one. But then in the middle, we had one that was 50-50, and it was from the Russian River Valley as well as Burgundy. It was actually a blend of the two wines together.
Oh,
And
very interesting.
basically had everybody rate what they liked, which combination they enjoyed the best.
Hmm.
And it was also fun because which did they like, wines alone versus
Yep.
wine with food, which in some cases was a different answer. And so
Yeah.
that for me was one of the most interesting and really excellent pairings I've done lately.
Ooh, that sounds great.
And
That's
now I'm
next
hungry.
level stuff.
Now
Well,
I'm hungry though.
you didn't you probably haven't always maybe you did maybe you had pairings like that growing up as a kid, but I'm guessing somewhere along the way you caught the bug for wine and would love to hear a little bit more about how this interest developed.
Well, it's funny that you meant that, said that maybe all along, right? Because for me, I grew up in meat and potatoes, and then
Hmm.
typically would be some sort of canned peas, corn, whatever it might be.
Oh,
And then it was baked potato or mashed potato, right? And then maybe once a week was fish. When I was old enough to learn how to cook, then we had pasta in there as well, chop suey or something interesting.
yeah.
So for me, it was no, there was not things that were crazy. It was probably chocolate milk or whatever with dinner. So yes, as I then started to get older, do different things, I saw many more interesting food opportunities out there than what I was used to.
Yeah.
And then certainly as I got into the business world, that's when it really kind of went wild, right? Getting into different things. And so very early on, I identified, I started at KPMG as an auditor, as many people going
Mhm.
into the accounting field do.
Yep.
Started as an auditor in Hartford, Connecticut, and the partners and senior managers that I worked with were huge wine aficionados. And
Ah,
so
yep.
for me, most people start off with whatever it might be, right? Like barefoot or other things, college or of course just out of college. And in my case, I started off with cake bread.
Wow.
It was cake. I'll never forget. It was cake bread, typically cake bread, duckhorn, every once in a while a Camus, and then some random things from outside the U.S. that I had no idea what they were, but enjoyed.
Yep.
And so that was my baseline at 21. Of course, then it's kind of tough to go from there.
Yeah.
But I learned very quickly that food, wine, doing the pairings, doing the events really were good for bringing people together, really good for business. And in my case, my golf game was bad, is never going to be good. And
Yep.
so I consider wine my superpower, right? I can bring people together, I can talk over it. And you can be talking in one hand about, tannins and terroir. And then in the next sentence, you're talking about family and business and whatever else it might be in the same breath. So for
Yep.
me, it was really kind of early on in the early 20s, which was my start with wine.
Wow, that's great. I haven't heard of too many people that unless they grew up on a famous estate or something that started with those kinds of wines. So yeah, it would be hard to go back to what other people might start with. That's a great story. So I think you probably started getting there a little bit, but tell us a little bit more about the inspiration behind your business, Stephen Uncorked.
Yes, so it's interesting as well. I never thought that I'd be in the wine business. That was not in my bingo card at any point in time. However, roughly 2.5 years ago, I was invited to a wine tasting. And now I don't know if I think everybody's probably been to a Tupperware party or Cutco knives or whatever it is, right over the
Yeah.
years. And so my prior memory of a wine party like this was one of my family members had set one up, and ultimately it was the guilt trip. Come on, Steve, you're the wine guy. You have to go. If you don't show up, like what is that saying? Like nobody else is going to show up. So, and it was my brother. So I threw him a favor and said, yeah, of course I'll go. And so I won't name the brand, but the wines were, shall we say, interesting. And not interesting as in the Vouvray that I'm drinking now, which is good, interesting,
Okay.
but a different interesting. And I'm going to take a sip.
Sure. Yeah, a polite way to avoid other adjectives that you might use. It was family,
Correct.
so I guess you
Correct.
would use such
And,
terms.
and, and so building into that, I was invited as subsequently, and a couple of years later to this event, 2.5 years ago. And it's a woman who she's in a couple of the international wine and food societies that I'm a part of. One of them being called International Wine and Food Society, the other one, the Chaîne des Rôtissiers, which are all about bringing people together, food and wine pairings, enjoyment of the grape.
Hmm.
And, my thought was, she was trained at the Cordon Bleu. So my thought was that it's likely not going to be the other one, but you never know, right?
Yeah.
Could have been a friend who pushed her into doing this, whatever. So I can immediately remember certain things in my life, and definitely some of those are wine experiences. I'll never forget the first wine that I had there. You walk in, you're greeted with a champagne glass or a bubbles glass, I should say, and it was a Cremant de Bourgogne rosé, and it was called the JCB number 69.
Hmm.
And so I guess you maybe never forget it because of the name too. But it really was just a spectacular wine. 100% Pinot Noir, just super crisp, perfect for that kind of event. And then I found out the price. Like I thought it was going to be two times that price. So
Hmm.
you have quality, you have a good quality per price ratio. And then we proceeded to have five or six additional glasses or types of wine tastes, not glasses. And then probably a couple more after that, right? Really spanning the spectrum from the whites to the rosés to the reds and everything else. And across the board, I was just fascinated by the quality. And then, of course, you see the price, and everything was a value for what it was, right? And so at the end of it, she asked me, and there are two things, right? Do you want to actually buy in, become a member? And the second question is this something you'd be interested in selling? And I said, well, number one, yes, I'd love to be a member. Like if the quality is that, you get a discount on your wines and everything else, I'd love to do that. Number two, as far as actually selling it, the wheels were turning a little bit, right? And it's like,
Hmm.
well, I could
Yeah.
see this being beneficial, interesting. I did not think that it would be where it is today. But certainly I saw it as interesting, if nothing else, than being able to buy the wines that I want for me at a discount because you get a
Yeah.
little better, being a seller of the wines. And so that's kind of how it all began. It's just that fateful day. learning about the Boisset collection of wines.
That's great. Well, to give us that's a great story, and compare and contrast your great experience with not so great with the wine tasting. Yeah, maybe this would be a good time to give us a little brief overview of your business. We'll dig into more details as we go through, but maybe that high level elevator pitch, or I don't know, whatever the wine analog to that term might
Yeah,
be.
sure. Well, Stephen Uncorked at the end is really about bringing people together, right? And so whether that be in the business sense, whether it be in a personal setting, but it really is bringing people together over a great glass of wine.
Hmm.
And, I do a ton of corporate events, many private events. Like any subscription-based business, the goal is to get subscribers, right? They like it, they stay with you. They have a SOM at the call, right? And I get that all the time where I sometimes will get things at midnight and somebody says, "Hey, Steve, I'm out with a date. Can you tell me what you would pair with this?" Or they'll send me a picture of a wine menu. Which of these would you pick? I don't want the cheapest one, but keep it under $200 or whatever it is, right?
Hmm. Yep.
And so just kind of having that sense of community, which
Hmm.
really is kind of how I see what my business is at this point. Really, it is a community. And then more broadly, there's others who do what I do. I think in many cases at a different scale, but it is really a community of like-minded folks who really enjoy wines, enjoy good wines, and ultimately want to bring people together.
Yeah, great. Well, that is a great segue because this is sort of a two-for podcast here because we're recording it around my food and wine interests was, under a cooking chat, but we have a
Hmm.
great event coming up for the nonprofit Social Capital Inc. that I've been leading for 2 decades plus now. And we connected over a glass a few months ago, and I sort of suspect it wouldn't be long before we'd be collaborating on an event, and we have a great one coming up. The theme of Social Capital Inc. is about cultivating connections. So maybe before we start talking more about the event specifics, maybe let's talk a little more about, just how you see, I mean, you've kind of talked about it a little already, but maybe digging in a little bit more how you see wine being one great vehicle for bringing people together and creating meaningful connections.
Yeah, when I think about wine, you know, it transcends language, right? It doesn't matter if you're a Spanish speaking or English speaking or Polish speaking or whatever it might be. Well, yes, the words for the descriptors may be different, but at the end of the day, right, a strawberry is a strawberry, or if you're getting honey, or if you're getting whatever it might be, right, that is kind of something that people can share over a glass of wine together. When you think about just broadly, what I see is a connection amnesia, right, where people don't talk as much as they used to. People
Yeah.
are glued to their phones, all these other things. There was a study that the California Institute had done a while back, and it went to a dark place very quickly. And the
Hmm.
reason it went to that dark place really was because of exactly some of those things, right? Where people are not talking to each other. People are not doing a lot of the things that they've done. I know one of the things I saw for SCI, and I don't remember the exact quote, was just, the lack of connectivity is the equivalent of smoking some ridiculous number of cigarettes a day, right? In
Right.
terms
Right.
of what it is.
Right.
And so, for me, it's been fascinating. There's a lot of different camps as far as, wine being good for you, bad for you, that sort of thing. But I think that everybody can agree that not getting together, not connecting is clearly very bad for you, right? And there's
Right.
unfortunately more and more of that that's happening on a day-to-day
Mhm.
basis. And
Yep.
so, you know, if I look at, do you have a glass of wine and have a nice event together, that sort of thing, but you're actually connecting, enjoying company, doing all those things, is that better than sitting alone and maybe doom scrolling like many
Yeah.
people are doing? I don't know. I don't know the answer, but I think that's, I know what I would prefer to do. And when I go to these events and I have, 30 people, 40 people in a room and they're talking, they're laughing, they're telling stories, and the phones are actually in the pockets, they're on the table, they're
Mhm.
away, they're not looking at them. That to me is better than many of the events where I go and, maybe it is just a family sitting there, three people on the phone, and then one person looking off into space type of thing, right? So if I compare and contrast, it really is bringing that community together. And it's funny, the background that I have here is Buena Vista Winery.
Mhm.
And so Buena Vista Winery is the oldest winery in California. There's an event 3 weeks from now in October, I think it's 3 weeks, October 25th, and it is a masquerade ball, right? And so I'm actually
Oh,
going
okay.
there with some of my customers.
Hmm.
And so again, I come back to that sense of community. That really is what I see it. And
Yeah.
ultimately, the individuals who I know will then meet with others in the group. And at the end of it, there's going to be fast friends, whether it's continuing dialogue, whether it's business opportunities, whatever it is, right? People are just connecting, they're enjoying their time And at the end, it is a social lubricant.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very true. I mean, I definitely agree. I would definitely choose choose the camaraderie with a glass of wine over the doom scrolling for sure. And yeah, like you say, I mean, is wine the thing for everyone? Maybe not, but
Mhm.
the idea of connecting around a common interest is powerful. Like for some, it's golf. Some I know I have a friend who will be at our event who loves golf and loves wine, and that's fine. But for me, I don't know. You and I might be similar in terms of golf. I definitely definitely will stick to the wine myself. So yeah, that's
If
definitely
going for the highest score were the objective, then I would do very, very well.
there you go.
Yeah, that is the objective in wine rating, right? You want the higher score,
Yeah,
but sadly in golf that's not the case. So
yeah, 100's not so good, huh?
yeah.
Or high 90s, right?
I'd be happy with 100 at golf sometimes, and
Yeah.
I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, great. And you t you've said it a little bit already, but sounds like a lot of what you're doing is curating these events and experiences. Obviously, wine is, part of the draw, and then people
Mhm.
are connecting. How do you think about not the logistics so much as creating an environment that does help people feel comfortable connecting? I assume a lot of the events you have, a lot of people don't know each other and that sort of thing. Any approach to how to create that kind of environment conducive to connecting?
Yeah, I think it's I kind of drop back to just broader networking and maybe best principles in networking, right?
Mhm.
You know, certainly in some cases it can be that people are there over a common interest, right? I've had events before where it is only CEOs that are at those events, right? So there is
Yep.
that kind of shared connection. But really, I see my goal and my job as the host of an event, in conjunction with the other hosts, depending on the nature of the event, right, is really how do you facilitate those conversations, the interactions, those sort of things. And if I think back to, for example, a networking event, I love
Hmm.
to throw out a fun icebreaker, for example, right? It's corny. Some people say icebreaker corny, that sort of thing. But if I look to some of the events that I've done, as people are coming together, if they have something to talk about that's not what do you do, which is
Right.
one of the
Right.
probably my least favorite question in the world is what do you do?
Yep.
What excites you about something that you're working on? What are
Hmm.
you looking to get out of this event tonight? At the SCI event, right? What is your connection to SCI? What do you know
Yep.
about them? What have you seen happen well? Those sort of things, right? So everybody kind of has that, and maybe the question there is, well, okay, if you haven't been a part of SEI yet, what other types of not-for-profits do you have passion for and why?
Yeah.
Right. And
Right.
so there's a million different ways to do that. That's not what do you do? And
Yep.
then going beyond that, if I think about networking tips that work well, it's, we were all there once, or everybody's at different networking points, abilities in their life. You see the person standing by themselves, pull them in.
Right. Right.
Or if it's somebody that you met before and maybe they're new to networking and they said something that stuck out, and you see somebody else who would be a perfect connection for them for whatever reason, to make that introduction, facilitate that, right? And
Hmm.
sometimes,
Right.
you're in a conversation and that conversation for you has kind of wound its course, right? But you have the ability to bring somebody in, get them connected, and that also gives you kind of a nice way to gracefully leave and move on for your rest of the night too.
Yeah. Those are great tips. Yeah. Both as an attender of an event, but also to think about how, as a leader of an event, you can help facilitate those connections.
Yeah,
So,
and well, one more thing that I'll just kind
yeah.
of put
Yeah.
a final pin
Please.
on that too is if I think about it, right, one of the questions I get all the time is somebody will say, "Hey, Stephen, we hear that you've had a fun event. Somebody's attended this cool event. We'd like you to do that for us." And but my first thing is always take a step back. What are you actually trying to accomplish? Do you
Yeah.
want a strictly networking thing? Are you trying to do a fundraiser? Are you
Mhm.
trying to make sure that people in this group that have never met each other before, from a group perspective, and maybe they're in the same team, are getting together and doing that? Are you trying to do something that's more educational? Because the answer to all those questions will very much dictate the nature of the event I put on. Right? I had one event where it was an accounting firm, 40-ish people, and there were the company was just acquired by a New York City company,
Mhm.
and the call it folks in the parent company were coming in for the first time, and so 30 of the people kind of all knew each other, but the six or whatever that number was from corporate did not know any of them, that sort of thing. So we did a
Yep.
wine blending event.
Oh,
And
fun.
so a lot of fun making your own Bordeaux style blend. It's figure painting for adults, basically. And so you have these people, they've never met each other before, and they're having good interactions. I dropped quite a bit of the script that I was going to do from an educational perspective because
Mhm.
that event was doing what they wanted it to do, which
Yeah.
was bring them
Yeah.
together.
Right.
Could they have learned more about wine? Could they have learned more about why blenders blend and winemakers blend? Of course. Is that going to be more beneficial than them just getting together, connecting over the things that they need to do and naturally figure out? From my perspective, no. And so I'm not rigid with what I do either.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, great to have some flexibility going in, and yeah, centering the goals of, which are going to differ for sure from event
Exactly.
to event. Speaking of events, it's time we've done little teasers about this great event coming up. So hopefully people listening to this are getting it before October 14th, 2025. I'm sure some people will
Agreed.
stumble upon it afterward, and we'll have more great events coming. But if you're listening to this before October 14th, you are in luck, and especially if you find yourself in the greater Boston area, because we have an event on October 14th at Gustazo Waltham. It is a fundraiser. It is a fundraiser, we do have monetary goals to raise funds to support Social Capital Inc. and our work to create connections across difference. That said, it is as much a friend raiser, trying to
Mhm.
create more friends for the organization, but to weave, some new connections and networks as well. So we do have a few goals, both monetary and connecting wise with the event. But I know you and I shared a glass of wine or two over some great food at Gustazo, and I think that was a little
I
bit.
think I think it was 2.5.
Okay, all right, all right. Truth telling. Yeah, and they have some great food. In fact, Gustazo was just spotlighted as a Michelin-worthy restaurant in a recent Globe piece. So tell us, yeah, I'm excited about the event. So, and we'll be sure to t let you know how to get tickets. But so it's wine from you, Cuban food from Gustazo. But tell us, maybe give an example of, a bottle or two that you're bringing to the event and how that might pair with some of the Cuban food that might be available.
Yeah, I think so. It's funny, that was one of the few questions we talked a little bit before this call, and
Yeah,
so Vouvray is one of the ones that will be brought to the event. So the Vouvray is, and you can kind of see here, a beautiful.
there it is. And I have the bottle. I didn't open my bottle yet.
But you're going to certainly enjoy that when you do it,
Yes.
for sure. So the Vouvray is 100% Chenin Blanc. I almost call it as if Pinot Grigio and maybe a Sauv Blanc had a baby type of wine.
Yeah.
There's a bit of sweetness to it. It's a super flexible wine. And
Yeah.
so this is one of the ones that I will be serving. And the fun thing with the Vouvray is that it is super flexible. And so if you think
Mhm.
about the Cuban style food, right, where some of it will have some of the saltiness, some may have the garlicky. I know that one of the things that we likely have is going to be the citrus marinated pork. And
Oh, okay.
this
Yep.
this wine will go absolutely perfectly with that.
Mm.
And again, white meat, absolutely, right? Because that's going to be on the lighter side. And
Yep.
when I do some of my wine pairing classes, one of the things that I always talk about is the whole like for like concept,
Yep.
right? And so if you think about something that is a super robust, you think about a powerhouse Cabernet Sauvignon, a steakhouse Cabernet Sauvignon, that's not something that I would pair with that dish with with citrus marinated pork, excuse me,
Yep.
chicken, anything like that, because that's just not going to work together. One is going to overpower the other.
Right.
Really the goal in doing the wine pairings, and I think will be the case here as well, is that one really elevates the other, right?
Mhm.
So one is not supposed to be the star of the show. They both basically make each other the stars of the show. And
Yep.
so as we're going through and we're doing recommended pairings, that would be one of the ones that I put there. There's other interesting things on the menu. One of my favorites is actually, and I'm never one to get excited about cauliflower.
Yeah.
The cauliflower
Oh,
dish,
the cauliflower.
yes,
Yes.
yes,
Yes. That is,
like
I can't remember if we
that
shared that, but I've definitely had that. It's good.
we did because I will not go there without having that dish.
Oh, okay.
I will not set foot into the restaurant without having that dish. Just
Yep.
hands down. And
Yep.
so the cauliflower dish is just truly exceptional, right? And so
Mhm.
that is as well one that you have the creaminess there, right? So that
Mhm.
could go with the Chardonnay. You kind of have a little bit of almost earthiness in a way, which could go with the Pinot Noir. So that's just a fun pairing type thing.
Yep.
But then broadly, we're going to have it'll be a good spectrum of wines, right? From your sparkling, which literally goes with everything, all the
Yep.
way through a few different whites to your reds. fun on the list will be a Beaujolais, for example,
Oh
which
yeah.
people have, Beaujolais gets a bad rap.
Right.
Beaujolais really does have a lot of flexibility in what it brings to
Mhm.
the table,
Yep.
especially this one, which is more of a medium bodied, still has
Yep.
a bit of sweetness, but will be really, really nice with some of those dishes. And cut
Yeah.
through some of
Yeah.
the spice to the extent that any of them are a little bit spicier as well.
Mhm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Looking forward to it. All right. I'm
I'm
getting
getting hungry
hungry.
now again.
And I'm sure everyone listening is too. So I will, in case somebody doesn't get our full conversation. So again, that's October 14th. They can get info. I'll link to it in the show notes, but they can also go to socialcapitalinc.org/network to grab tickets. And it's gonna be a great time. And Steve and I both,
I'm
I'm
looking
sure,
forward to
hope to
it.
see you there. Um, Great. Let's take a deeper little, learn a little bit more. I know you've alluded to, talking a lot about events and networking, but there is the wine piece, and that is the core of your business. I mean, it sounds like, obviously events are right alongside it, but tell us
Yep,
a little bit more about the wines, just in general, not specific to this event coming up, but in general that are available through the wine club that people can join
sure.
by connecting with you.
Yeah, so as I mentioned before, this is a very unplanned, unexpected thing to be in the wine business. Now,
Yeah.
nobody is shocked, just know my background that I'm a part of the wine business. But for me, it was definitely unplanned, unexpected, right? There's so many different ways to go. There, you're working through wholesale or at a restaurant as a som, a million different things.
Right.
Um, and so you know, as I mentioned, as I tried those wines, I was just shocked at the quality, right? And I continue to be amazed at the quality. I also continue to be amazed at the breadth of the portfolio, right? And
Hmm.
so the Boisset family, just give a brief, I'll keep it a super brief, but brief history is the winery started in 1961 in Beaujolais, France, so in the heart of
Yep.
Burgundy. And so Jean Charles, who is the main proprietor now of the Boisset collection, his family had found it in 1961, literally in their kitchen. And now, of course, they're
Mhm.
quite blessed to have the caliber of the grapes around there, as they do. Right, Vougeot literally is consistently Grand Cru and just truly, truly the creme de la creme, right? But as they grew, and again, 1969, that's why that wine I mentioned before was number 69, the year of Jean Charles' birth.
Yep.
He was born within a handful of years, he's part of the family business. You imagine, I see the grapes behind you, right? Like out there
Yep.
helping to pick them, do those sort of things, help in the kitchen. I believe he was probably sampling and doing some tasting notes by 6 or 7. It's
Right.
okay in
Right.
France, of course.
In the family.
And so that was really the start to that was in France, right, in the heart of Burgundy.
Hmm.
Subsequently, Jean-Charles at some point had visited the U.S. And basically fell in love with the U.S. And
Okay.
so as he continued to get older, evaluate things, he purchased a handful of wineries in the United States.
Yep.
Wineries such as Buena Vista behind me, but then
Mhm.
also Raymond Vineyards, Deloche,
Yep.
Elizabeth Spencer, and a handful of others. Wineries that are well known in France would be, for example, Bouchard. Bouchard and Phil
Oh,
is a
sure.
very,
Yep.
very well known winery,
Yep.
which will be definitely trying some of those wines on the
Great.
14th. And so really it's across, old world versus new world. What I really enjoy about the wines is that the old world style in many ways transcends into new world wines, right?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
thoughts such as organic, biodynamic, sustainable, that is something that really crosses across the spectrum.
Yep.
And certainly resonates with me and quite frankly with many of my customers as well. People are
Right.
looking for cleaner. Broadly speaking, people are looking to drink less, but drink better. And
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
one of the things that the wines that I do bring to the table. And again, with the focus on California, Sonoma, Napa, and then California, much of it in Burgundy, but then also in some of the other regions in the Rhone and others as well. And
Yeah.
of course, the Vouvray being from the Loire Valley, for
Yeah.
example.
Great.
Um, Quick note on that as well. I had
Yeah.
mentioned a little bit, right? Drinking less, drinking better.
Yeah. Yeah.
One of the things that I love doing the events like what we're doing and love
Hmm.
doing the different wine tastings that I do, where we may open 12 bottles of wine at an event, right?
Right.
And it could be an event for 20 people, we open 12 bottles. And
Yep.
people are like, that is absolutely crazy. Like, I can't believe you're doing 12 different wines.
Yeah.
But you're having an ounce of each,
Yeah. Right.
right? At the
Right.
end of it, and it might be a 2 hour event, 2.5 hour event, people are having 2 glasses of wine,
Right. Right.
but they're able to open up the equivalent of $500, $800 worth of wine among friends that on a person basis is
Hmm.
negligible, right? And you can
Right.
actually
Right.
say, I like this, I don't like that. If you're going to a restaurant and having one glass, you can't do that. And
Sure.
so for me, it's really a fact finding. It's phenomenal. I have
Yeah.
the events which people have never tried some of the wines that I've incorporated in those events before.
Mhm.
People are get into friendly sparring competitions, which again is kind of that camaraderie community. Um,
Yeah.
just it's truly fantastic. So that's kind of the heart of what I do in terms of the nature of the wines. Um, Super quick facts, like for example, the Boisset family exports roughly a quarter of all the Burgundies sold in France.
Really?
And
Wow.
they are one of the few, looking at like wineries such as Deloche and others in the U.S. Some of the really very few biodynamic type wineries that are out there, which
Okay.
biodynamic is basically organic on steroids.
Right, right. Yeah, I know a little bit about that. Yeah, cool.
So,
Well, you're definitely getting me more and more ready for the 14th here. Um, and so somebody decides they're excited about this. We obviously have folks listening that are maybe not going to be able to make it on the 14th. What does it look like for somebody to get to, check out your wine club? What would be entailed for them?
yeah. So I'm guessing you've been a member of wine clubs before,
Yep.
correct?
Yep. Yep.
And I've been a member of quite a few, quite frankly, a number of them from California, from the number of times that I've been there. And you're there, you're enjoying the wine. Hey, if you join the club, your tasting is covered. And the reality is the wines were great. I enjoyed the experience. I enjoyed everything else. But then all of a sudden you find yourself with 10 different wine clubs.
Yeah. Right.
And
Right.
right, and then all of a sudden the UPS and FedEx people are like, what the hell is going on with this person? And
Mhm.
so
Yeah.
I've ratcheted back on some of those. But as I look back to some of the other wine clubs that I've been a part of, what's been very interesting to me is just some of the things that I didn't like are
Mm.
things that do not exist in my wine club. And
Okay.
so I'll kind of give the lay of the land. The wine club is very straightforward. Ultimately, the Wine Society, as it's called, you sign up and you get a 20% or more discount on everything purchased or basically everything purchased. And you essentially say, I'd like 3, 6, or 12 bottles a quarter. So not a month, not one of the month,
Mhm.
one of the quarter,
Yep. Yep.
a quarter, and then white, red, or full spectrum, meaning white and red. And
Yep.
so it's super straightforward, very easy. In a lot of cases, I'll do a tasting and somebody likes this wine, and this wine, and that is what they use as their first shipment. Oftentimes somebody will add in a bunch of different additional ones. They want to try different things, but really the commitment is the 3, 6, or 12, and the white, red, or both.
Yep.
Moving beyond that, and this is where I kind of compare and contrast,
Hmm.
there is complete flexibility for the person. So, for
Oh,
example, if you come to me and David says, I am going to sign up for 6 bottles and I'd like the red spectrum. I don't need any whites. I just want all reds. You'll get an email 2 weeks before that ships. And the email may say, David, thanks for being a part of the Wine Society. We're going to ship you 2 bottles of Beaujolais, two
hmm.
bottles of Cabernet, and 2 bottles of this Bordeaux style blend, for example.
Yep. Yep.
And you might say, you know what? I have a friend, they're getting married, and I'd like to bring 20 bottles of champagne to the wedding. And so instead of those 6, you can completely knock those out, put the 20 bottles in. It is 100% flexible.
Oh,
The
okay.
other
Nice.
thing is that you can also skip shipments. So, you might be out of town or you may not, maybe your wine cellar is getting too full. Whatever it might be, you can skip that shipment. There's no
Yep.
cost to join. And so really for anybody who's looking for good wine and
Yep.
drinks, at least call it a bottle of wine every month, which I think is most people who are enjoying wine.
Yeah.
It is completely approachable. And then,
Yeah.
the interesting stat when you look at the average time of cellaring for a bottle of wine,
Hmm.
cellaring is a funny word, right? Because for most Americans, especially, the cellar is the trunk of the car, right? Because it goes to the
Yeah.
trunk of the car, or maybe the back seat, or wherever the wine goes, and then gets opened within whatever it is, 6 hours at that point.
Right. Right.
And so for me, I'm bringing the service as well, where in addition to giving good quality wines and checking all the other boxes at a good price,
Hmm.
actually having the wine and not having to run to the liquor store to get something.
Right.
And then the other thing that I'll just add at the end is that being, the nature of our wines being direct to consumer, the many of the wines that we have wines that are intended only for that direct to consumer channel. And so the
Mm.
stats change a little bit, but it's usually like 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10 are not commercially available. So the
Oh,
wines that
okay.
we
Okay.
sell are not going to be
Mhm.
something that you find on the restaurant list. It's not going
Yep.
to be something that you find in the liquor store. And so, my customers will see it, they'll enjoy it, It's like, okay, there were 100 cases of that wine produced. So if
Yep.
you want it, just get it now.
Right. Okay. So there's a scarcity or hard to get aspect. Right. Okay. Nice.
We all play hard to get, don't
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
we?
Oh, that sounds great. And so, yeah, coming up, anything in your collection that I'm sure people are starting to think about the holidays, any bottle that pops to mind that's popular or that you would recommend if somebody to sign up today and thinking about, oh, I want to make sure I get something in my shopping cart from Stephen to hook me up for the holidays. Anything come to mind?
So the Vouvray, 100%. I know I've said that a couple of times, but that really is just, it has a tinge of sweetness. Sweet wines are usually not my thing, but this is just a nice, absolutely like one of my top sellers. But again, one of the best ones pairing with food. You know, if you're
Yeah.
having the applesauce, for example, at your Thanksgiving dinner, if you're having the stuffing, like it has that tinge of sweetness that really is fantastic.
Hmm.
The other thing that I would go with for sure is thinking about a Thanksgiving dinner, for example.
Hmm.
Um, Pinot Noir.
Yeah.
Again, that like for like, right? If you have turkey, which is not a super robust, strong food,
Hmm.
having that, more elegant Pinot Noir with it, a perfect pairing. The
Yep.
other thing that gets, I would say, not a bad rap, but the wrong rap is rosé, right?
Yeah.
Everybody says, rosé, that's something you drink by the pool. That's something you have in the summertime. Well,
Right.
rosé is absolutely one of the most food-friendly wines. And not to go intensely into the why behind that, but one of the courses that I do is actually called Spectrum of Style. And in
Mm.
Spectrum of Style, we actually group the wines into five different categories. So vivacious, voluptuous,
Hmm.
you can see there's this going, elegant,
Yeah.
sensuous, and
Yeah.
powerful.
Yeah.
And so vivacious and voluptuous, those are for whites,
Yeah.
rosés, and sparkling wines. And then
Hmm.
the other categories, elegant, sensuous, and powerful for your reds. And
Yeah.
so a big part of that is helping people identify number one, what is the style of wine they typically like?
Hmm.
Now, I've gotten in trouble before for telling a woman that she wasn't elegant. And
Oh,
I was really saying that she did not enjoy elegant wines, right? She was
okay.
more
Right.
powerful.
Yeah.
But that can be fun too. But in any event, the Vouvray, for example, falls into that vivacious category, as
Yep.
do many of your sparkling wines, your champagnes that are super easy, food-friendly wines. The
Yep.
rosé is the same. And so that also kind of helps people, again, find what do they like? What do those food pairings look like? And again, that's a whole other course. I won't be doing that at the event that we're doing on the 14th, but that is one
Right.
that has been a lot of fun. Being an accountant by trade, of course, we like our PowerPoint, and so I do a nice
Yeah.
PowerPoint slides, do the demonstration, all that kind of fun stuff. But yeah, those are the big ones that I look at. Getting into, the holidays, whether it be Christmas, Hanukkah, as you get deeper into the winter,
Hmm.
and you have, I would say, kind of a broader range of foods, oftenly,
Yep.
add in your Cabernets, add in your Bordeaux style blends,
Yeah.
add in your bubbles, always bubbles, of course, always bubbles.
Sure. Great.
Well,
Well,
what are you
sounds.
having for Thanksgiving?
Yeah, we do turkey. Yeah, I do turkey. I have enjoyed Vouvray. That's always, being a wine and wine pairing person, I do always have to come with a half dozen bottles to
Oh
similar
yeah.
to like I probably, don't have a full glass of any of them, but that, just I gotta try this, try that, and yeah, that's always a lot of fun. So
Very
yeah,
cool.
looking forward to it. Well, but some good stuff between now and then. Uh, Before we wrap, anything that I haven't had a chance to ask you about that you want to highlight? Or maybe you want to underscore something that you've already said.
Um, no, I think for me, like I said, it really is the power of connection, right? And
Yeah.
so, when you and I were initially talking, of course, I'm always happy to meet new folks and have great conversations, right? That's what we both do and I think
Yeah.
enjoy. And of course, a very glass of shared wine or two.
Hmm.
Um, but just the power from a not-for-profit perspective,
Yeah.
right? And so for me, it's been great because I've been able to work with a number of not-for-profits, between the Alzheimer's Association to the
Mm.
Andes Institute of Art in Brookline, New Hampshire,
Mm.
to really just a number of them. I had conversations with Springfield Museums the other day. There are just so many avenues for raising money. Um,
Yeah.
and the reality is, right, for wine enjoyers, they're going to enjoy wine anyways.
Right.
Well, why not actually have a little fun with it?
Yeah.
If somebody's going to give something to their donors, give them a wine tasting, right?
Yeah.
Don't just give them a trinket or something like that that's going to be put away, or a shirt that they
Mhm.
have a million shirts or caps or whatever. Give them a wine
Right.
tasting. Have
Yeah.
them invite 10 friends, for a few $100, do something that's actually much more meaningful, interesting.
Right.
And then you're actually, well, surprise, surprise, bringing people together
Yep.
and getting kind of that stickiness back to the organization, which is what you
Right.
want. And it's just a better event, right? People
Yeah.
getting together. So I think that whether it's for the corporate events, just that's what I broadly underscore is just not to underestimate the power of doing those sort of events.
Yep.
Again, not remiss on me that more people are not drinking these days.
Yep. Yep.
And so then I also work with folks who, for example, Beth's Chocolates in Newton, who is a
Mhm.
chocolate maker, right? We can do a
Oh yeah.
chocolate making course. And yes, you could
Mm.
pair wines with that or abstain, completely
Yep.
fine.
Cool.
I have a tea som
Hmm.
who, he alongside me could literally do the tea.
Oh,
I work with
interesting.
another woman from a company called the Speckled Moon, where
Hmm.
she does Venetian inspired masks. So you can do a paint and sip. And of
Oh,
course, you could be
nice.
sipping the fun and fantastic wines that I bring to the table, or water or coffee or soda, whatever you desire on
Yeah.
the other side.
Great. Yeah, that you got to roll with the times, especially creating some different pathways that people can go
100%.
to. Perfect. Well, great. So, how do people find you other than showing up on October 14th? Where are
Well, I
you?
want to meet
On
everybody on October 14th.
Right,
I'd love to
right.
see everybody there. And then, just blow the doors off of Gustazo, they need to get additional space. But as that might not happen, although we are pretty close to sold out.
Yes, yeah, yeah. People definitely shouldn't dilly-dally on getting their tickets if they're intrigued.
Yeah, I need to look at the list because I have at least a few folks that I know said they're going to sign up, and I know they will, but I need to reiterate that message of
Right.
scarcity coming back to that topic.
Yes.
But getting a hold of me certainly via LinkedIn.
Yep.
And then across socials, it's Stephen with a PH, which you can see on
Yep.
the screen. But Stephen with a PH, Stephen Uncorked is all my socials. And then
Yep.
email, as you see on the screen, as well as Stephen at StephenUncorked.wine, not .com. And I
Okay,
look
great.
forward to hearing from anybody. Happy to have a conversation about all things wine or capital markets or any of the other fun topics that I like talking about too.
Excellent. Well, definitely. It's been a pleasure getting better acquainted here and
Oh,
getting
thank you.
excited with this preview of the event on October 14th. And we'll link to all those socials in our show notes. And
Cool.
cheers. It's been a pleasure.
Well, cheers. I'm sad that you have not opened your bottle.
I know. I'm
And
sorry, but I'm
and
excited.
and,
I'm ready. You've given
and
me,
you're sad too.
yeah, you've given me some good hints for the food pairing. So stay tuned.
Looking forward to it. Well, we'll see everybody on the 14th. Thanks, David. Really, really appreciate the time.
All right. You too. Take
All right,
care.
good. Take
Bye.
care.
Thanks for tuning in to this episode of Cook Local, Eat Local. To get the show notes with links for recipes and resources we covered today, go to cooklocaleatlocal.com to get the podcast landing page. And please be sure to subscribe to Cook Local, Eat Local wherever you get your podcasts. Make it a great day with some tasty local food on your plate.